In the top lane, it's Solo. Jungle, Santorin. Mid lane, Big Bad Phoenix. In the bot lane, it's Rikara, and alongside him is Wyan.
Right, and over on the red side, it's Big God Jackals. Top lane is RF Legendary. Jungle is Wiggly. Mid lane, Pekin Wolf. Bot lane, Fabi. And support, Biano.
So Big God Jackals taking a big win in game number 1. Rather, I mean, if coming into this we had expectation, you mentioned Gold Coin United, very clearly one of the top-seeded teams. This has to be viewed as like a challenger upset within the first week.
Right. I mean, when you just look at that roster, a number of those guys were arguably very, top half of the LCS for their position at certain points in their career. Phoenix in particular being a player that many argued was top 3, top 4, depending on the season and the meta. But there, obviously, they didn't have what it took to close the game out, and I think I want to see what happens in game 2 now that we're in the pick ban.
Well, we'll have to see here. We did wind up seeing Kha'Zix was the pick that they had on the side of Gold Coin United. Even though we've been talking about the priority of Kha'Zix throughout the night, the games that we've watched, he's 1-3.
Well, I think the thing to keep in mind is that there's a reason he's not permabanned, the way that we see the Rengar, the LeBlanc, and the Camille, those three obviously taking priority over him, because as strong as he is in the fact that he doesn't have losing matchups and he can snowball, he's not as reliable as a Rengar ulting at 6 and things like that. There's a lot of things that can lock him down. He can get, if he just falls behind, he doesn't have damage. He's not a tank either. He doesn't bring much utility. There's a number of ways that the Kha'Zix pick doesn't work out. So, like I said, no surprise on the red side to see Camille. Rengar. On the blue side, we're seeing some targeted support bans in support MF and Zyra, which generally indicates a Malzahar first pick coming in.
That's very true, and this is the second or third time we've actually seen the Zyra and the Misfortune both being banned out on the same side. Normally, if you leave one open, you're planning on taking the other one, or if you're banning out one of them, it's because you cannot play the other one. But 3 straight support bans over here from Gold Coin United, including that Lulu pickup, which, like you said, very indicative of Malzahar.
Yeah, bold prediction here, guys. I think we're going to see a Malzahar first pick. The question is, does Big God Jackals really change up their bans and just target the Malzahar? You basically wasted the other team's 3 bans, but you end up handing them over the LeBlanc. The question is, of course,
or Ryze.
Or the Ryze. I think the LeBlanc would probably be the priority, assuming Phoenix can play it, but that's something that we've talked about a little bit before, the fact that something is banned so much, it's banned that much in scrims as well, that you actually get no practice on it, and then when it's available, you're suddenly put up against the wall like, whoa, we don't play this. Gold Coin United is saying we do in fact play it.
Guess so. They wind up insta-locking that LeBlanc as soon as the plan is sniffed out, and they wind up banning away that Malzahar. So Big God Jackals, they still have a couple of things they can respond with. The Ryze pickup, while it may not be as potent in lane as the LeBlanc, has been left open on the table, so they could try to take that in their first rotation.
Yeah, and sometimes you see some alternative assassin matchups. We saw in the LCS, I think it was Golden Glue who picked a Katarina into High's LeBlanc. Didn't work out for him. The Kha'Zix still available as well, so it's be pretty interesting to see what Big God Jackals decided to go with here, given that there are a lot of options in the mid lane. I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe even they take a support here potentially, or an 80 carry. There's no need to force the mid lane pick right now. You can wait a little bit longer if you want to.
Of course, if you do wait till the second phase, it could be banned out, but by picking that...
Don't wait that long.
Don't wait that long.
Yeah, I was saying, I like the Karma pick here because there are so many supports banned. This is the strongest one left available. Grab it while you can, force them to do something else. This is kind of forcing Gold Coin United to take a support in this rotation as well, because if they don't, you get the pinch on the support position, which has already been pinched extremely hard. So I like the Big God Jackals choice here to go with the Karma instead of taking a Ryze or something that's not going to get taken anyways.
No, we also don't know what the picks and bans were specifically for game number 1, more specifically the ban phase, but there was a Braum in that. We haven't seen Braum in competitive play for a very long time, which is indicative to me of the fact that by taking that Karma in the first rotation, they're very good idea because the support pool is already so pinched. Second rotation, you could ban out that Thresh. We've already seen it banned once tonight, and that really leaves kind of like a second or third tier into those picks.
I mean, the fact that they decided to go with the Lee Sin pick there instead of the support position basically is saying, ban Thresh out. We're not going to play it anyways. Ban whatever. We're going to pick the Braum again, which obviously didn't quite work out that game. It's hard to know because we didn't get to see the early game exactly what happened with the Braum in lane.
Right.
But another interesting thing is the fact that Gold Coin took Ashe there, which of course means that they can now pinch the 80 carry pool because Big God Jackals wanted to grab that Ryze, so it didn't get banned in the second rotation. Pretty interesting drafting all around by both teams, ending up in a pretty volatile draft phase here.
Yeah, and actually pinching the 80 carry pool may be a very good plan of attack from Gold Coin United. Fabi, while he was in the LCS, was very renowned for playing a lot of those utility-based 80 carries. The Ashe was one of his very favorite pickups in that, I believe one of his most played champions. But if you take the Jhin away, you take the Varus away, you have to put on something that's a little bit of a harder carry or relegate him to something like that Ezreal.
Right, and I think that's ultimately what he's going to end up on. He used to be in the Challenger scene a pretty heavy Lucian player, and he was actually known for being pretty aggressive and good at carrying, but something happened when he got to the LCS, whether it was the big stage, the stronger competition. He ended up playing a lot more defensive, and I mean, the meta changed as well, where utility carries were focused more. Here on the second ban phase, Big God Jackals is targeting top laners, looking like they want to get into a tank versus tank matchup, not trying to get counterpicked and ending up in something else.
And actually a Caitlyn ban comes out from the side of Goldcoin United, so that is still going to wind up leaving the Jhin as a potential pickup for Fabi. Don't think they're going to wind up taking that one away, and that would be a relatively safe pick, which still leaves that kind of tank versus tank matchup, and they'd be able to kind of pick their kind of favorite flavor of tank, although I mean, we may see Fabi returning to something. Yeah, returning to something he's a little bit more familiar with. I was kind of hoping maybe we'd see like an older school Fabi Draven, and we'd have Draven for Freeze and Fabi, but going for the Lucian that we haven't seen in competitive play for quite some time.
Right, and I think this might be Big God Jackals reacting to the fact that they don't think Goldcoin United has a support in their pool that's really going to punish this pick. Of course, it is tough to play into Ashe, given like we were talking about the range disadvantage. You already have the Karma to help out with that problem a little bit already. She has a ton of lane pressure, and the fact that you're expecting this Braum pick, it's not going to be the most punishing thing in the world, assuming it doesn't get a lot of gank assistance where he jumps forward, you get the stun off, probably an exhaust as well. So interesting to see the Lucian come out, and what, like we said, we expected some support bans on the red side in the second phase, but given that what Big God Jackals had seen out of game one, they felt comfortable giving them the Braum.
All right, and so we'll have to see how this composition gets rounded out inside of Goldcoin United. Nautilus, Maokai, Poppy, everything's still available. And actually, trying to pinch the pool with the Kennen and the Fiora, they did leave open the Jace, which hadn't seen a lot of priority in the rest of the matches with Bandit and a couple, but left open in some of the others.
Right, it looks like they're trying to cover up a little bit for RF Legendary, limiting the carries of solo. He's always been a pretty aggressive player. He can take over games. He had a really good Gnar, and one of those champions that can basically start snowballing on the top side all by himself and transition that elsewhere on the map. Here we see the Nautilus lock in for RF Legendary, getting up on that tank, getting that Jace versus tank matchup. Always a very, very scary one for both sides. If the Jace gets ganked early and can't get ahead, ends up becoming useless. Similarly, if the Jace gets way ahead, he just starts popping the tanks, popping everybody, and split pushing down a ton of turrets.
Right, there's been plenty of times where we've seen what the Jace can do once he winds up stacking up some of those armor penetration items and eventually shredding through the tanks before they could even really get to that point in time. But the side of Big God Jackals, they have a very solid kind of composition. We've seen already the side of E United be able to succeed when they had the Rise and the Kha'Zix kind of synergy out of their mid lane and jungle duo. We'll have to see if it's going to be replicated by Big God's Jackals this time around.
Yeah, and I think the thing I'm really looking forward to is seeing how this bot lane plays out. The Lucian pick is one that if you're not playing aggressive, often doesn't get very much done. If you're just using your ult for wave clear and stuff like that, it's not a very strong pick. The fact that they prioritize it over the Jhin, which was available and something we've seen Fabi perform pretty well on, will be interesting. And I think it's going to be another thing to watch in the mid lane. Of course, the fact that LeBlanc is in the game. Anytime LeBlanc is available, it's pretty explosive.
So we'll have to see. The champion LeBlanc has been banned away in just about every single game tonight up until now, and it's in the hands of Phoenix, who as a former LCS pro is definitely going to be well versed in being able to, once if he gets ahead in the laning phase, if he gets a lead that he could potentially snowball on that LeBlanc, it's going to be terrifying for Big Gods.
I mean, the problem and the knock on Phoenix was always his communication and a little bit of his consistency. He was always a monster in lane in terms of farming. He often was pressuring people in, and LeBlanc's a champion that can do that, but it does benefit a lot from roaming around the map and being able to get pickoffs going, and that was something that Phoenix was never great at. He had a Talia that he played, and was much more of a lane-focused Talia than many of them, so be interesting to see what he can do with the LeBlanc here matched up against the Rise, another priority mid laner.
Well, he may not have an Azir wall to pop off and get a quadra kill, but he does kind of have that feast or famine style. If he sees a big play, he may go for it. If he gets exhausted and shut down, it happens. If he gets a quadra kill off of it and gets into a highlight reel everybody can remember for basically forever, that could also happen too. But I'm also interested to see how this Lucian pick is going to pan out for Fabi. Touched upon it briefly. It's a comfort pick for him. It's not something we see an absolute lot of, but he is paired up with a lane bully and Karma against the Braum in a melee matchup. Braum himself in general, he has really great gank assist, but he doesn't necessarily have the same kind of harass those ranged mages do in the bot lane.
Right, now that we talk about those two lanes, you gotta look up at top side and realize, oh, there's another interesting matchup there. Got Jace versus tank. Like what I'm saying here is there's a lot of action I'm looking forward to in this game.
I think what you're saying is the Challenger Series is a wonderful thing.
Is that a lobster logo?
No, it's a reindeer.
Oh.
It's Santa Braum.
I mean, lobsters are red. I'm not looking that closely.
Maybe I don't know what you have for Christmas dinner, but generally it's not lobster, and I don't think
I didn't even know it was Santa.
You don't even know it's Santa?
I thought it was lobster fisherman Brahm. I don't know.
Lobster fisherman Brahm. I don't know if that one's on the skin team's docket or not, but...
Come on. There's probably a huge pool of players who are lobster fishermen who would love a skin like that.
Can you name all of Santa's lobster fisherman reindeer?
I'm going to ignore that question. We're looking at the top side here. Jace getting the early push onto the Nautilus. Going to be farming under turret, which is what's always so annoying, matched up against the range. Jace, he gets poke on you, he gets the autos. Though, like we said before, has to be careful of the ganks. Nautilus has a lot of gank setup, and Kha'Zix does a lot of damage.
Well, one of the things that we saw from the Jace matchups, going back to 2016 Worlds even, he was kind of picked as the go-to lane bully in the top side of the map, the Jace versus Poppy. Jace would very oftentimes get 30 to 40 CS advantages over the Poppy. The Poppy's job was to basically utilize teleport to not make sure the tower didn't die super quick, and then farm up to the point where she became unkillable, and eventually defensively outscaled the Jace, pending the Jace did not just move around the map, take a tower, and then start popping other people. So very similar thing here from this top lane is RF Legendary, skilled Jace player in his own, used it to climb all the way back up the Challenger, I believe at the beginning of the split, was very well versed on that champion himself. He's gonna have to now just withstand the wrath of that Jace.
Of course, that is the big concern. Of course, the other part is the Lee Sin. We were talking about how the Lee Sin matchup into Kha'Zix hasn't been as strong as it had before when the Tempest would reveal the target. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily awful either. You still have a pretty strong one-shot potential if you come into the counter ganks second. So, you know, the fact that you get the QRQ combo off on the Kha'Zix is pretty guaranteed if you're able to W to the target that he's going on. And then there's that one-shot threat, especially in a lot of these matchups where Jace has a lot of damage, LeBlanc has a lot of damage, Ashe and Braum can follow up with a stun. Things like that are huge concerns. We see the 1v1.
Like this.
Huge trade onto both of them, dropping down to half health. Q connects, he can take it.
Oh, he's going, he forces the flash as well. The flash forward, the red buff has applied, and first blood goes to Santorin.
Very nice play out of him. I mean, that's exactly what you're hoping to do as the Lee Sin. Both these guys being squishy, building warrior enchant. I mean, once one of these guys gets ahead, you can easily start snowballing the matchup with invades at 6 and things like that.
And, well, ask and you shall receive, as we already saw aggression coming out from the jungle matchup, and there is Phoenix getting super aggressive onto that rise. LeBlanc just lane bullying that guy who just really wants to sit back and try to scale up. He will actually get a nice opportunity here to go back and pick up his tier. Actually has not actually has the gold for it though. No, he waited a little bit, sorry.
Yeah,
he goes back and picks up the tier. He faked me out.
Look at what else he can get with his gold, thinking about it. He's going to lose a huge minion wave, though. Going to fall about 10 CS behind Phoenix, though Kha'Zix is here to clean it up. And he's probably pretty happy to get that, given that he got killed already. Helps him stay a little bit more even in the matchup versus Lee Sin.
So while we have had a little bit of action in the early stages of this game, I guess this is what we get for asking Gilius about the actual matchup. We actually get to see it. We get to see the Lee Sin get the early game advantages because of it. But we'll have to see if Santorin can really apply some of that pressure. When he was in the LCS, a lot of the flack Santorin got was from having a very high kill participation, but not feeling like he did a whole lot on the Rift. He's got himself first blood this game, so he's already set himself up to potentially do something.
I mean, we talked before about how when you're a jungler, it's not just about getting the kills, it's about blowing summoners, it's about invades, wards, all these other things. And so kill participation is pretty easy to get if your team doesn't get a lot of kills. You just happen to be around the few that do happen. So when you look at it in that context, kill participation does not always indicate jungle prowess. And I think that was kind of one of the knocks on Santorin. Whether or not that's justified is different, but he's always been a pretty confident player, with that one knock being that he is a little too passive.
Well, we'll have to see here. He's back in the Challenger Series now, and as we already heard from Freeze, this is an opportunity for some of these LCS players to kind of reinvent their image, kind of make a new name for themselves. And if Freeze had anything to do about that, he looked really great in game number 1. Santorin has had a rough game, supposedly, since his team lost game number 1. Now he's on a playmaking champion. We'll have to see what he can do, especially when he has a playmaking mid laner around him like Phoenix.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to when he's able to meet up with him and hopefully get some roams off. The top side of the map is something you would ideally target, start trying to snowball that Jace, let your bot lane just hang out. I mean, it looks like they're doing fine so far. Down 10 CS isn't ideal, but they are pretty mismatched in the support position.
Right.
and just being able to hold on down there with the utility AD carries is what makes them so useful in the current meta.
And while the AD carries and the supports trade back and forth, so do the mid laners as Phoenix's LeBlanc continues to apply the pressure. Actually taking Exhaust as a second summoner spell as well. Doesn't necessarily need that for the laning phase, but he can use it against the Kazakhs if they gank, or if they go for some interesting invade patterns as the red buff respawns. Looks like it did wind up going over to their side, but Wiggly's going to be there to shut down Santorin as the collapse winds up happening. Meanwhile, on the bottom side of the map, Big Gods is also winning out in that trade. A double kill goes over to Wiggly, so he's able to pick up 2 for himself, but Phoenix roams in. He's actually got the red buff after it's been passed around a little bit.
And kind of cross-map play ends up being a 3-for-1. There's a dive bottom onto Rikara. He goes down. The invade being a little too aggressive, even though they get the red buff, ultimately die. Phoenix here overstepping a little bit, getting chunked out. Might not be able to get away here, but Ryze has no mana.
Yeah, so he's actually able to just barely get away from that. Did get a little stuck under tower by the CC coming out from Nautilus, but maybe a little bit too much happening from Gold Coin United. We talked just right before that saying, is Santorin going to be able to make something happen? They go for an invade, and it winds up backfiring on them.
And here we get a replay of exactly what happened. We see that they're going onto the red buff, getting low as they take that damage, and then the fact that Santorin just gets opened up on by the Nautilus, it's so easy for them to do that. And Rikara here, seemingly getting caught out, trying to get back to his turret, not even getting forced off of it, just off the reset, unable to do anything about it. And we see that Fabi's Lucian actually got a pretty big lead now, 20 CS plus a kill. He's going to be able to play very, very aggressive. And honestly, if Big can start playing around the bot lane, maybe start forcing some action down there, then they can probably take this game again.
Well, he's got a serrated Dirk in his inventory already, so indicative of going for more of that armor penetration style from Lucian that we were used to seeing last time he was very popular in the meta. But you can see already 3.1k compared to way less than 3,000 gold already on the side for Rikara. So this is the matchup that he talked about he wanted to play against. He's already got an advantage. But meanwhile, in the mid lane here, Santorin goes in. The red buff tick will not take down Peek and Woof.
Oh god, just needed one more auto, maybe an E thrown in there, anything to get that last pick of damage, but it just was not quite enough. So the Big continuing to trade aggressively down the bot side of the map, throwing out those ultimates. They're low cooldown.
It's true, and at this point in time, since they've had an advantage in that bottom side of the map, there's no reason not to just try to continue to push it further and further. Before that gank on the mid lane here, we were saying, Fabi in his interview said he wanted to play against challenger AD carries like Rikara. He wanted to play against people where he felt like he would be in an advantageous matchup, and he has it right now, and he's showing why that matters. 86 CS to 57.
Right, and I think the big thing is if they're able to get this turret pretty quickly, because you want to get that Nautilus out of the lane versus the Jace as soon as you can. If you get the turret before the Jace does, you get that bonus gold, you keep it off him, and then maybe you can swap your lane to the top side of the map, and ideally avoid having the Jace continue to get that farm advantage. It's only quote-unquote at 20 right now, and we've seen before that sometimes 40 CS leads on a team that isn't actually snowballing isn't enough. And you really got to snowball the Jace very hard in tank matchups.
Well, Big Gods looks like they're identified the fact that that tower is extremely low, and they want to get not only the first blood tower gold, but like you said, open that map up. They've already killed the Jace when he went for an invade with Santorin's Lee Sin, so they've already actually killed him once. And if they have the ability to swap this up, put him into a 1v2 scenario, or force him to go onto a side of the map where he will be unsafe, that opens up that gank path, and it opens up the opportunity to keep him, like you said, from getting out of hand. Actually, since they're already down on the bottom side of the map, they force the enemy bottom side away. They also get a free Cloud Drake.
Right, not a bad objective to grab before you start rotating your bot lane away, so that way you don't actually really lose anything should you vacate that bot lane. And I think even the Cloud Drake doesn't particularly help any of these teams a ton. It is nice to grab, and of course the other option other than putting your bot lane top is to go into a 1-3-1. It is pretty good about limiting the LeBlanc's options, though she can easily just match the Ryze. Both these champions are very happy to be in side lanes. Tons of escapes, mobility, ways of dealing with threats.
Well, speaking of that LeBlanc, we mentioned the bully lane potential coming out from there, and we talked about the CS advantages on both sides of the map. She's up 93 to 68, and actually the ultimate coming out here, the dredge line going to connect as well, and as Fabi rotates up, he just finds himself another kill.
This is exactly what we were talking about, though. Peekamolf's under pressure. He gets popped under his turret.
So everybody from GCU went mid, everybody from Big Gods Jackals went up top lane, and they both result in kills.
Some communication issues clearly for both teams. The bot lane had recalled a while ago. Where do you think they're going? Either top or mid. GCU goes mid, gets a kill on the mid laner. Big goes top, gets a kill on the top laner. And here, trying to finish off Ayano, he gets stuck under his own turret for two people, and he goes down. RF Legendary teleports in, trying to get something done, but has no ultimate available. Probably not going to be able to get a kill, as GCU looks like they're trying to turn it back, maybe.
Yeah, that Nautilus was just stuck between a lot of crowd control. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow, the tether coming out from LeBlanc, just so many chain CCs, which has also kind of been a theme of Challenger so far.
Kind of a theme of League of Legends as a whole. It's always been a pretty strong comp. You saw a lot of that kind of stuff back in the day with Syndra at least actually still being relatively strong in this meta. Zyra is another one that always had that line CC. And we see Fabi able to take down yet another turret in the top side, but GCU's going to answer in the bot lane.
Yeah, this time there's an answer available for GCU, and because some of those gold objectives have gone back in their favor, and they do have 2 of those CS advantages on their side, despite being down 1 tower, the gold counts are even at about 20,000 gold.
One thing I will say in GCU's favor is that generally when you pick a Jace top lane, you don't have great tank available for your team. And that's one of the biggest weaknesses, is that your team fighting suffers a ton without a frontliner to hide behind. But GCU has slightly covered that with the fact that they have picked a Braum. Obviously not a strong pick in the meta, but does help address one of the weaknesses that generally comes with taking a carry top laner.
Yep, so if you don't need a frontliner to stand behind Braum.
I think there's an ability name that even indicates that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think it is. But now we actually see Big God's Jackals. They are kind of iterating on what we thought they would do. They had swap Fabi out to the top side, sent Nautilus down to the bottom side. We'll have to see Nautilus now pushing that wave out and recalling. Are they going to match the Jace, and are they going to try to continue that kind of 1v1 in an elongated, rather unsafe lane? Or are they going to just try to group everybody up, as they do have their dual lane in the mid lane, looking to get that last outer tower?
Well, BIG seems pretty happy to keep accelerating this game, trying to mow down the turrets. Unfortunately, probably not going to work here, as both Rikara and Phoenix are going to hold onto the turret. Got to head back up top side, deal with Jace pushing his wave in.
That's right, and even though the Jace may have been kept down for a little bit right now, he has picked himself up a Black Cleaver, so he's already got one of those first item power spikes. He's going to be shredding through what little armor the side of Big God Jackals has gotten in the earlier stages of the game. On the flip side, Lucian's completed his own Ghost Blade, so he will be shredding through what little armor the side of GCU has on their early game builds as well.
And I really dislike what BIG is doing with their lane assignments right now. They're basically tri-laning mid, and on a champion like Ryze, you really want to get that farm. And he's not a perfectly fine 1-3-1 champion, though I understand the bot lane wave is not in the perfect spot. What you should really do, instead of sitting around mid waiting for the wave to come in, you start branching out and trying to get deep vision into the bottom side of the map, so the Ryze is actually safe to be there, as opposed to having to piggyback off the mid lane.
Well, now he's got himself a blue buff, so we'll see if now that he has a almost limitless source of mana, if he's going to wind up going into a side lane, or if he's just going to join up with everybody and go for that last remaining outer tower. Enchanted Crystal Arrow has been used to try to dissuade Big God's Jackals, but RF Legendary is there to tank it up, and the tower winds up going down. But are they going to be going for a fight? The Shock Blast and the Gate combination does not really deal a lot of damage. The Flash Wave, but the re-engage is there from RF Legendary. Phoenix now in the back line, winds up distorting backwards, and he gets caught out of position. RF Legendary is going to get that kill. The Realm Warp is used to just reposition the whole team on top of GCU, and they are scattering to the wind.
The hook misses just barely, and it's unable to continue the fight. Ends up a nice 1-for-0 for BIG, though, after they took the mid lane turret. Things are looking pretty good for them. They got up to a 5K gold lead so far.
Yeah, and that was also off of the turn. They wound up getting Enchanted Crystal Arrow, they took the tower, they wound up getting Braum ultimate, and they had to try to run away from all the incoming CC, but Phoenix's flank didn't pan out that time. We talked about it. Sometimes he gets the big play, sometimes it doesn't work out.
I mean, he even said that in his interview.
It's true.
Here, though, we see that after getting the initial engage, they're trying so hard to punish this force that BIG did to take that mid lane turret, but ultimately they don't have anyone who's very happy to be frontlining. You know, Braum can do it for a little bit, but once his shield's down, he's got to back off, and that leaves the target alone for them to focus down in Phoenix, who took his distortion back, which wasn't really that far away from the rest of the team.
No, not at all. So he winds up distorting himself into, well, what is the enemy backline where he wanted to be, just not at the point in time when Nautilus also joined up. But in the silent here against Peek and Wolf, while he still has not completed a Rod of Ages, or potentially not even going for that one, but still only has components to his items, LeBlanc is still going to be able to bully him around, whether she's got the death or not.
I mean, that's one of the things that you can say that is going very nicely for GCU, despite the fact that it seems like they're getting outmoved on the map. They're not even in turrets. They're down one there. Their farm in a lot of the critical positions is significantly higher. We see Jace up 50 CS, mid lane up about 40 as well. And those are champions that really want a lot of gold. Not so much the Nautilus, but the Ryze being down that much hurts a lot. The fact that he's just picked up his Catalyst, is not have his Roa yet. It's coming up on 16:30 into the game. That means it's not going to be stacked much later. And overall, a very weak Rise when you're usually terrified of them.
One thing that you can use to augment some of the stats you might be missing from getting some later item power spike can be the bonus statistics you get from Dragon. The Mountain Drake has been picked up, which will give Rise not necessarily the same dueling power, but it will give Big God Jackals a little bit more power to pressure some of those towers. But if you're going to get caught out there like Biano has, that Enchanted Crystal Arrow was spot on from Rakara.
Feel the power of the Freljord, Tom. Arrow, ult.
Did you know that every single Freljord champion has some form of CC? Like hard CC.
Didn't know that.
Now you do. And you saw the power of that right there. It only took one to knock down Biano, and it takes two, as well as a couple other members from GCU to knock down that mid lane tower, and now they've ended up at 3 apiece.
Yeah, and with that, they've basically evened the gold up, taken a small gold advantage. And like I said before, while normally you see the Jace top lane and an assassin mid and a Lee Sin jungle, you're going, uh-oh, they got no tank. Doesn't matter if they're even in gold at 20 minutes in the game, they need to be ahead. It's one of the few times that I wouldn't say that necessarily, though it is still more difficult to play their comp than BIG's.
That's right. Their composition is definitely a little bit more fragile, but if you're able to execute it at such a high level, the hype coming in for this team was the fact that they had big talent, they had big names, they had a good supporting staff kind of backing them with a Loco Doco as their coach. So coming into this one, being able to execute a higher skill cap sort of composition where you are definitely more fragile and positioning is key, you would think that this would be one of their strengths. So, I mean, they've already got the CS totals to show that they're able to execute on these champions, but now it really comes up to the last part, which is team cohesion.
Right, and I'm going to be interested to see exactly how GCU tries to get the game more in their favor. I think they want to keep up the aggression, keep mowing down turrets. Obviously, the Jace still has priority over the Nautilus. LeBlanc probably has some over the Rise still, given that they are so far ahead in CS. But the map control isn't actually that in their favor. I don't see a ton of deep wards down on anywhere but the bot side a little bit. And it seems like it's going to be hard for them to actually force a play onto BIG, given that they never are going to be able to get a good TP flank or anything like that. They don't have the Realm Warp or anything to set things up. It feels very hard, minus the Ash Arrow, to really get a fight started once they do split the enemy team up, which is probably what they're going to try and do with their 1-3-1.
But if they do want to get one of those picks, there's a lot of follow-up CC, whereas the side of BIG, they have a definite advantage in the split push potential when the game goes later on. But as, like you said, at this point in time, the composition from GCU has a lot of hard-hitting characters and a lot of damage that is going to wind up bullying those champions out, which culminated in the CS leads. But BIG has been able to get the advantage in the dragons. They have that Cloud Dragon, they took the Mountain Dragon, which is the one they just took not that long ago, and now the Baron coming up on the map. Like, you really have to worry about now where your warding goes and who's going to be able to do that.
Right, and we see in just 20 seconds, Baron buff will be on the Rift as well. We wave goodbye to the Rift Herald. Something that we haven't seen much in the that we saw a lot in the ULOL series, excuse me, is the fact that people take a lot of Rift Heralds there.
Well, that might be the difference between collegiate play and pro play, where one prioritizes it, and one doesn't.
Or just those games snowball like crazy. Who knows?
It could also be that, but here in the Challenger Series, we have yet to see one being taken. Though there is a teleport coming in from Solo, as it looks like he knew he was getting collapsed on, so he's going to use that to get out.
Yeah, not a bad call. Like we said before, Jace is not a champion who loves to TP flank anyways. And we see the Ash Arrow open up by GCU onto the Karma. Not going to be able to continue getting in there, as our Legendary's got a good flank onto Solo as he's going to get focused down.
Yeah, he actually winds up using the Nautilus ultimate there as well, just to wind up knocking him up and taking him down, as Fabi's able to utilize the culling to take it down. And that's what you were talking about before, Mark. You have the Ash ultimate to kind of go in, but they need the follow-up.
Right. Who's next in after the Ash Arrow? The Braum? That's fine. But he can only be in there for a couple seconds before he needs to back out, compared to something like a Maokai, a Nautilus, things like that. And we see that Big is going to try and force around the Baron buff now with just Solo dead. Santorin's still alive, could potentially steal. Looks like they're having a hard time turning off the Baron.
Yeah, well, it looks like the flash, the dredge line, it will be met with a flash from Makara, so that Ash will be able to get out with her life. So they are going to be able to force Big away from this Baron, but Fabi getting in the face of his former teammate of Phoenix there, just trying to whittle away. The flash has been burned. They all flash after Phoenix. He split away from the team, and he goes down.
This is one of the things that we heard coming out from our previous interview was the fact that a lot of teams look good on paper, but what's much more important is your macro play and your synergy. We see everyone there once they realize that Phoenix was cut out of position that, hey, let's flash on this guy, and you see everyone instantly jump on it.
Right, so Big God Jackals, although they didn't necessarily take the Baron, they baited the Baron, and they were able to get not only the flash off of Ashe, but the life of Phoenix as well. So now they've been able to move around the map a little bit, but the gold counts are still relatively even because they're still down in that CS count.
Right, and I think you just see, though, the troubles that GCU might have with their team fighting. If they're not actually able to split them up, then they get that problem. They basically opted into a 5v5 there, where previously I was saying, all right, if you get the Ashe arrow on somebody and people are spread up, the LeBlanc can come in and hopefully blow somebody up before it gets too hairy of a team fight. But there, they go into the Karma. Karma's able to get out just barely, and then after that, it's a chase down.
So now we'll have to see what the next thing on the map is, what they chase after. So GCU, they've shown, like you mentioned, it's a very fragile team composition. They were able to execute a little bit well on it when they tried to go for that Ashe initiation. They wound up losing Phoenix. They were able to execute well enough to the point that they could dissuade from the Baron, but as soon as they got turned on and they were overextended just a little bit too much, they wound up going down. They kind of need to get into this situation where they feel more comfortable pushing the advantages they have in the laning phase. Otherwise, we might get into a situation like between Team Gates and Delta Fox where they feel like they have to start seeding too many things, and eventually Big Gods is going to start taking a lot.
Right, and I see the dragons coming up in the next 10 seconds. It's Ocean Drake. We talk about sometimes things are okay to concede, sometimes they're not. Ocean Drake probably being one of the ones you're fine giving away at this point in the game, 23 minutes in. It's not going to have the largest impact, and its biggest importance is really how it factors into the Elder Drake that will be coming up in the next 12 minutes.
That's right, and Elder Drake fight was what ended game number 1 in this festive
It's been ending a lot of series. It ended game 1 of the second series as well, I believe.
Yeah, so a lot of priority on the Elder Dragon. Of course, these games going a little bit longer than they were in the 2016 season. Ryze using a Realm Warp to not go into the Baron Pit. Fake.
Put it on cooldown.
Psych.
I got baited. I was like, where is he going?
I thought maybe they were trying to sneak it, but there was also a Scuttle Crab over there from the side of GCU.
He had the creep in it. I thought maybe he was trying to port the creep in there or something. I didn't know what he was doing.
That'd be interesting. I don't think the creeps would actually attack the Baron. I think they just kind of march right back to lane, but I've seen that as a style thing to put the minions into a base and tank up the Fountain Tower.
I saw that as well. I thought that was disrespectful to the minions.
It was definitely disrespectful to the minions. They work so hard, and you reward them by just putting them into the enemy base. They're hardworking. They want to take down the Nexus.
Yeah,
too.
they just do what they're told. March down the lane. Go fight those other minions.
Get killed by LeBlanc. Get killed by Jace.
You see, once again, teams setting up. 80 carries mostly focused around mid laners in the side lanes. Not too much pressure, though. It seems like a lot of these guys are afraid to really go up and pressure the turrets. This is something that can be very, very scary to do in the competitive scene where you want to walk forward to pressure the turret, but you can get caught out and then everyone makes fun of you for being an idiot because you went too far up. But at the end of the day...
Is that what happens in team comp?
Yeah, I'm telling... No, not in team comp, but the community. That's what they say. Teams are so respectful. No one ever argues in teams.
Nah, no.
But it is the kind of thing where if you're picking something like a Jace or even a LeBlanc to an extent, you do eventually need to push up to their turrets. And if you're not doing that, you're not using the pick to its fullest potential. And whether that's because your vision's not good enough, your team isn't good enough, and here we see Solo finally going to make a play, gets caught out.
Yeah, he was trying to go for the blue buff, but they don't have that established vision. Like you said, they're not pushing up to the inner towers, and it is extremely difficult to take those tier 2s. You really need to be able to be safe in your setup, especially when you are playing a little bit more of a pick or a poke in a squishy composition with just that single tank in your support. Otherwise, you get caught out and blown up like that.
Yeah, I mean, we see there was a single ward on the side of GCU in that part of the jungle. Obviously, he just took a different path around it. He doesn't see it coming and dies for it. Once again, Big gonna force onto the Baron buff, hoping probably to turn off and get some more action.
There is a ward. We'll see if GCU is going to turn on this one. The Realm Warp is available, and it won't wind up porting both Peek and Wolf and Nautilus into the back lines, but they immediately get met up with the Braum ultimate. Santorin's going to be able to take down Peek and Wolf, though, and now it's going to be Fabi who winds up taking down the Braum. The Zon just comes out from Phoenix. Is he going to be able to dash out? He gets rooted up by the Nautilus. There's a burn effect on him, and he's barely going to live as the fight is continuing, and Solo has respawned. The gate, the shock blast comes in. He does not take down Wiggly. Now he's trying to fight off both Fabi and Kha'Zix, whereas on the back lines, Karma goes down to Santorin. They're chasing Nautilus out of the fight. They've chased the Big Gods out of the pit, and that's going to be GCU taking the fight, and now they're trying to pincer down on Wiggly and Fabi. They're caught out. They have a couple of minions, but I don't know if the minions are going to save them here. Solo's poking from the one side, and they are running towards GCU's side of the map, which doesn't bode well.
Nope, they're definitely cut off. We see Phoenix has rejoined the fight after healing up in base. Gonna root up Fabby, gonna have him drop. Wonder if they're gonna keep going on to the Kazakhs. He's a pretty mobile guy.
Well, so is Lee Sin as he ward hops over the wall. Braum with the flash, and the Q does not wind up landing, but the Sonic Wave, the resonating strike, the Hex Drinker pops. They almost take down Santorin, but he's gonna wind up smiting for the heal. The Redemption goes out as well, and now it's GCU's Baron to take. There's only one person very, very close on the map for Big God's Jackals, and that is Rise, and I do not think he's going to be able to stop this Baron from going down all by himself.
Nautilus TP'd in, though.
Oh, Nautilus to the TP. The respawn is there. Karma comes in. The Baron, however, does go over to GCU, and they feel like this just happened, but now Pika Wolf gets a kill. He winds up taking down the Braum. He gets exhausted, has to flash out, and Phoenix cleans up another kill. Now in the back of the fight is Nautilus. There's low health bars from GCU, but Nautilus cannot do enough damage.
God, I don't know how many kills that was total. I think it was 7 on the side of GCU to get back into the game, as well as a Baron buff. Who knows, really?
I'm a stats guy, and I have no idea.
You can't count?
No.
Anyways,
Not in
that's a huge play for GCU. They get back in the game, they get the Baron buff, and most importantly, after that fight, the fact that both Phoenix and Solo live with the Baron buff. If they want to continue trying to split up big, this is the ideal time to do so. The fact that they got the Baron onto so many important members of their team.
Yeah, and that was just one of those fights where Big God's Jackals had done this before, and they were able to turn off, and they were able to capitalize on it. But this is the question we had. Can GCU execute this? Can they stop a Baron fight like that and turn it in their favor? And they answered with a resounding yes.
Right, I mean, the idea wasn't the worst thing in the world, the fact that they try and do the Realm Warp to turn off, but they didn't actually get onto any priority targets. I think they were just stuck onto the Braum, I believe it was.
And they got stuck on the Braum ultimate, too.
Right, so it was not a clean thing where they were killing Rikara or Phoenix. Rikara was mostly untouched, getting his Hurricane procs off on everybody, and Exhaust went down on him, but that's not going to stop the DPS for too long. And after that, they had to really just run away, but they had enough people coming in, the Jace got back into the fight, and the whole play just took so long that GCU totally recovered from it.
And you've been talking a lot about the fact that GCU has a one-tank composition with their Braum, but so does Big Gods. And when Nautilus is in the back line, you just turn to the back line that he's left completely exposed, like in that fight. He tried getting a nice dredge line onto somebody there from the side of GCU, but they have Baron buff. They can just sit there, they can fall back, and they're not going to try to overextend.
GCU sitting at a 4K gold lead now. Going to keep trying to extend it with the Baron buff. They're all grouped up around mid lane with Phoenix just splitting bottom. It's not too surprising to see them being a little more cautious when you do the 1-3-1 against the Nautilus. Any stray hook could instantly lead to a kill and a fight. They don't have the TP on the Jace, so they're taking it a little bit slower. We see Phoenix able to grab that bot lane turret. Slow rotation coming in on the side of BIG.
Normally you would see the Rise being the one to kind of deal with the LeBlanc on the split push, but he's been set behind fairly far. He has his Rod of Ages. He got it later on though, so I don't even know if it's actually fully stacked at this point in time. He has recently gotten a Ceres Embrace, but those are the only 2 items he actually has. Normally when you're getting that fully stacked Rod of Ages, you're getting that Ceres Embrace. You've already gotten onto your 3rd item, so because of this, Big God's Jackals, they have to rotate around as a group, and they're just seeding turrets left and right because they have to commit too many resources to deal with what the side of GCU is actually throwing at them. They actually utilize the Realm Warp as well. They're trying to get on the Phoenix. Their mid lane inhibitor tower is going down. Their mid lane inhibitor is going down as well. Sure, they pick up the kill on Phoenix, but at what cost?
The cost of an inhibitor, Tom. I mean, I can't think that was worth it at all. I can't believe that they bother going that hard on Phoenix. It's true you're in a tough spot where the team is splitting you up all over the map, but you just can't afford to let your base get cracked against this kind of composition that loves splitting you up, because now they have so much free pressure available from the mid lane that you're going to have to keep someone there dedicated while they continue to do this likely 4-1, where they'll be putting Jace on the bot side once this TP's back up. There's a chance GCU chooses to play it slower and wait for the next Baron. That's always an option, but gold lead has continued to grow up to 6K now.
Well, the Ocean Drake going to be one of the consolation prizes for Big God's Jackals. When you've lost multiple towers off of a Baron buff, you've lost your mid lane inhibitor, you have 4 dragons, but you have to be a little bit concerned now because GCU, as soon as they got that Baron buff, they turned up the heat a little bit. They started taking those objectives. Like you mentioned, they've increased the gold lead now to about a 6,000 gold lead. They're starting to make those proactive plays. They're starting to push up and get that vision control and get that lane dominance that now Big God's Jackals has to try to deal with.
Right, and there's a number of really important items that they were able to complete, starting with that kind of influx of Baron gold that they got from that huge play. Phoenix is sitting at 3 items, getting very close to his death cap as well. Jace has gotten a fair amount of armor pen and AD. He's going to be able to do a lot of damage to tanks, which is initially the concern that around that mid game he starts losing that ability. But from here on out, GCU has gotten a big enough lead that I think You know, as long as they play the situations out from here, this is the kind of lead that you need to end the game.
Right, this is the kind of, now that we have established control of the game, how do we end it? Not necessarily can they do it, because hopefully they can. They have the composition, they have the tools to do so, but are they going to be able to execute that? You're looking at Jace with all those items. The Nautilus only two completed armor items at this point, so even though he goes in for the dredge line, it's about half of his HP and damage as the Lord Dominic's regards. That's going to be helping out towards that. There's a double Zeal item power spike on the Ashe as well, so that critical strike damage you see stacks up slowly with their Q, going to be tearing through these very squishy targets on the side of Big Gods as well.
Ooh. See some of the rise damage there when he starts getting the bounces on his spells. Does a lot of damage. Redemption comes in, it's trying to heal up GCU a little bit, but Fabi goes in, having to flash back out.
Yep, now it's just all about GCU. They're trying to push forward. They stayed alive through the initial engagement, and they're actually able to start kiting back and blowing up key targets. They are able to get the kill down onto Phoenix, so now we'll get Kha'Zix a reset. He leaps down onto Braum, and that's going to give him another reset, but the retreat coming out from GCU. Wiggly jumps forward. He is going to be met with a flurry of blows. Oh, that's going to be a 2-for-1 trade so far in favor of Big God's Jackals. A flash away from Rakara as well. Looks like they're going to try to give chase just a little bit.
I mean, they have the karma to keep trying to speed them up, though they are starting to fall behind. I'm not sure they can keep this chase up. Cloud Drake, not enough.
Unfortunate. They have taken... Man, they took the Cloud Drake, they took a mountain, they took...
Who needs so many oceans? They need some Cloud Drakes.
I guess so. If they were running through the river, maybe they would have caught them then.
Right, and I think that fight was one where you see just how hard it can be for GCU to team fight in these straight-up 5v5s. Pretty much any time they get one, they lose it. They need to keep going for these split-up fights. That's where they're at their best. That Baron fight that turned the game around for them was extremely scrappy. It was not just this easy, oh, we're both bumping into each other. I think they'll lose most of those engagements. You talked about the fact that Nautilus, you know, is the only tank on the side of BIG, but once they're just forced to hit him, he's going to last a lot longer than any member available for GCU.
Right, and the Kha'Zix pickup coming into play here. 5-3-3 now for Wiggly. I mentioned earlier on, it might not have been just because of the Kha'Zix. He was 1-3 on the night so far, but once he actually gets those resets, you get past the tank of Braum. Those are just squishy targets waiting to continue that kind of snowball effect in the fight. Similar to what Phoenix is trying to do by blowing somebody up, waiting for cooldowns and doing it again. You can do it a lot quicker if you jump on them with the Kha'Zix.
One thing I have to give credit to, though, is Fabi playing not the strongest pick in the meta, but doing it very well, especially against a team like GCU. While they are squishy, which is great for Lucian to kill people, it's also very dangerous because they do so much damage and he is short range. So it can be hard to play Lucian in team fights where if you get too close to anybody, you get insta-get. But he's performing very well, 6-1-3, had a really strong laning phase as well. He was really what opened the map up for his team to start snowballing and grab that early lead. And I mean, it's hard to fault him for probably what happened in that Baron situation. That was much more of a team error. So overall, a really great game from him.
Well, that has been the strength of Lucian. He was kind of like a lane bully. He's always been extremely strong pressing into the middle stages of the game, but he does get outclassed by some of the later game scaling AD carries, the Ashe in particular. We've talked about multiple times throughout the night already. She's a character that scales extremely well into the later stages of the game, and that continues to press the question we were asking GCU. Beforehand, it was, can you stop Big Gods from taking a Baron? They did. They wound up taking inhibitors, and then it was, can you end the game with an advantage? Question's still on the table.
Right, and I think one of the things that always made Lucian difficult to play in the late game was never his damage. His damage has always been fairly strong, though it had dropped off a little bit with changes to some of his itemization and the nerfs that hit him, but it was always the range. Whenever you're playing a short-range AD carry, they're super hard to play. You see things like Vayne basically never touched in competitive scene anymore due to that, as we see soloing down this inhibitor.
And at the same time, GCU, they're going to wind up starting Baron. They know that the side of Big God's Jackals had trouble kind of splitting their decision-making. At this point in time, they peel Nautilus away. They finally send 4 towards the Baron to stop. That means that Jace just takes the free and hit. Right,
and you see that they want to go deal with that top wave, pushing into them on the top side of the map before continuing here, as well as the fact that Big has grabbed priority in the mid lane. GCU is going to back off, grab control back of their waves. There's no reason to rush here. The fact that you just got the inhibitor is great, and it's forcing Big into a play of their own.
Yeah, they're actually going to go immediately for that, and then the hawk shot from Ashe actually reveals that they're doing it. So now GCU, this could be the same song and dance that we saw previously.
Ooh, gotta get sniped.
Crystal Arrow. He does wind up having the QSS to cleanse that off, but the go in from Braum, the redemption is going down as well from both teams actually. Both of them land on the opposing teams, but the force forward from GCU is going to be the first kill going over to Phoenix. RF Legendaries in the backlines trying to disrupt as many people as possible, but even the tankiest of Nautiluses shall fall as Rakara winds up picking up that kill, and now GCU is on the chase. The shock blast from Jace will not wind up finding a target, and it looks like they might be setting sights back to Baron.
The big problem there for Big was the fact that once Nautilus had joined the fight, Fabi had already dropped so low that he had left it. We saw Rise throw some damage spells in there as well as the Kha'Zix, but there was no potential actual threat of killing anybody, and now GCU is forcing onto the Baron, though Big might not be done yet.
Wiggly is on the outside. Kha'Zix could jump in and steal this one. They don't have any vision. They don't know how low it is. Still hovering around about 2K, but they're not even go for the steal. They're pinging down on the Elder Dragon.
Oh, they're going to try and trade with an Elder Dragon. That's a pretty risky move to go for, but they might be able to do it given that a lot of their damage dealers are still alive.
And they have 4 Drakes already acquired, so that's going to be a huge boon for them. They get scattered out once again by the Hawkshot coming out from Ashe. Everybody from the side of GCU is running in. The Elder Dragon's down to about 3,000 HP. They're going to take it, but can they get out? The Realm Warp is available, and it will get them to safety.
Not a bad call by Big. Instead of going for that Baron steal, they go for an objective trade. A pretty heads-up call, actually, all things considered, that it was such a split-second decision. Hopefully with this, they'll be able to force a fight. I don't think that they can hope to just hold on to their base with it. They do probably need to engage. And the sad part is that RF Legendary no longer has his teleport available to him.
That's right, but they do wind up having the Elder Dragon buff. It will be lasting just about as long as the Baron buff will. So if the fight is what they are looking for, GCU is naturally going to have to take it. They're not going to necessarily want to waste their Baron buff, and they're not necessarily going to be diving in for a fight, but the places they're going to be going on the map, like that last outer tower on the top side, could potentially be contested because of the 4 dragon stacks on that Elder Dragon burn.
Right, it's going to be hard to see exactly which one ends up being more valuable. You can say the Elder Dragon will do more in a fight with the burn that it has, but it is not as useful for holding off these Baron buff minions. Overall, GCU has to play it very careful because anyone getting caught out could be their death.
And the main wave clear from the side of Big as well is primarily magic damage. You have Rise, who has a lot of magic damage that can wave clear, but against those Baron buff minions might be here. There was a flash and a Dredge Line from RF Legendary, but Wiggly's the one who looks like he's one going down on the backside. Ricard is taken extremely low. The culling comes out as well, and health bars are dropping so low on all sides. Fabi dashes in, gets some more damage on Wyan. They do have the burn effect. It gets those health bars extremely, extremely low, but they have to back away because there's super minions in their base.
Oh, that was such a close fight for BIG. The fact that they were able to push them off, almost win the fight, is great, but they're going to have to keep going here. Solo gets caught again.
He has a Guardian Angel, but he's going in and going down. That's been popped, and there's a bunch of sharks waiting for their prey on the side of Big. That's a shutdown going to Fabi.
Can't help but think that was a little bit of a bad decision. I mean, just because you see the Kha'Zix on the bot side of the map doesn't mean that you can't die all of a sudden. It's just the jungler there. I mean, you still have Fabi, you still have RF Legendary obviously catching you out. Second time in the last minute he's been hit by a hook, basically, starting off both those fights.
Ricard was low, Phoenix was low. He was the only damage dealer left. Even if he had the rest of his team around him, it was still a 4 versus 3 situation. So Solo, unfortunately, going down in that situation. He won't have the Baron buff anymore, and that does kind of put now a bit of a pause timer because GCU, even with the Baron buff, they really can't pressure in a 4v5 situation.
Right, and I think the thing that's still fine for the side of GCU is that they have so much more map advantage. The fact that there's no inhibitor turrets on the bot or mid side of the map. Even if their Baron buff goes to complete waste here based off that play, the fact of the matter is that as soon as you wait for everyone to get back up and the TPs to come, once again, the Nautilus will be isolated versus the Jace, assuming you're playing around the Baron buff again. So this might just end up being a massive 5-minute pause.
And the Baron, of course, will respawn faster than the Elder Dragon, so they won't have to worry about a trade scenario like there was before. But they will have to worry about the fact that now that Big's kind of getting an influx of gold on their side as well. Yeah, they had the Baron buff. Yes, they're pushing in. But for the time being, if they have to wait until the next Baron to spawn, they're getting more and more gold being flooded into the side of Big. And they're starting to really start to come to the point where, once again, we're at a 40-minute game. We're getting into the 5 to 6 item territory.
I mean, the champions that were far behind are extremely happy about this. The fact that Nautilus is down over 100 CS, basically getting Flame Horizon.
Yep.
See Pekin Wolf finally up to 4 items himself, matching Phoenix, who's at 5, 4 almost. I mean, he's got the chain vest, still picking up some components. You see, once again, they open up.
They're going for the bottom lane inhibitor area, but Kha'Zix is going to get the shutdown on Ricard, who goes down extremely early, so that's one big damage threat down. Phoenix has also been chunked out to below half. The Realm Warp comes in. It brings Nautilus and Rise in. Rise has to flash out almost immediately. RF Legendary is able to tank up a lot of damage. The Unbreakable Shield from Braum blocks the entire culling, but he's going to get hooked, and he's going to go down. Wiggly picks up another kill there, and now GCU just has to run away.
Once again, we see GCU grouping up, trying to force around something, and once again losing the fight. I think they got to realize that they can't keep doing this kind of play before they're going to end up just throwing the game away.
Well, that's happened, what, twice now? There's been one on the top lane when they had the Baron buff, this one in the bottom lane. They actually had a previous fight before, it was a 2-for-1 where they were trying to break the inhibitor the first time around.
There was the mid fight even before all the Baron shenanigans happened. I mean, basically any time that these two teams have matched up 5v5, it has gone poorly for GCU.
Well, the question we had for them is they had a 6,000 gold advantage at one point. We're reaching the point where the 3,500 gold advantage they have right now, we mentioned full item builds, starts to matter a lot less and less. The question was, can they end it with this gold advantage? The answer seems like no. And now that we're at the point where that gold advantage doesn't really matter, it's changing from can they win when they have a lead to can they not get 2-0'd?
I mean, that's the big concern. I mean, look, we're talking about big favorites coming in this week, and for the whole Challenger Series, for the whole year, I mean,
yeah.
I think these were the favorites just based off the firepower on the names, but there's clearly some coordination issues. They're not being able to get a ton done on the map. Their draft, I mean, I actually don't hate it, but the way that they're playing it out is something I'm not a big fan of. On top of the fact that in the early game, we saw a lot of their supposed strongest members struggling. Phoenix was not able to get much done.
And you mentioned before, like with a draft like this, it's not a bad composition. It's one that you have to be able to utilize very well. And while they were able to do that just based off of their CS advantage that they had during the laning phase, there's question marks around the community, like you said, around communication. There's question marks around can they end with a composition like this? And even the composition they had last game, they had trouble. They had early advantages. They weren't able to capitalize. And Big God's Jackal was able to draw it out until the Elder Dragon became relevant enough that they finished the fight off of a 42-minute Dragon. Now it's 42 minutes. There's a Baron coming up. No Dragon, but still a big purple objective on the map.
Big purple objective. It's everyone's favorite thing to do late game. Do the big purple objective.
I guess technically Elder Dragon is more gray. He's wise in his ears, not really purple.
Yeah, but he's like the second choice. Like if I offered you a big purple objective and a gray one, you're going for the purple one.
I don't know. Big God Jackals had the opportunity to try to steal that Baron, and they went for the big gray one. Maybe I'm just a Big God Jackal.
I mean, I think that was kind of more like, oh, we can't really get that one without killing ourselves.
That's fair. So I guess everybody does. The Baron buff is definitely the one that says we can end the game with this by pushing minions. We don't have to fight. The Elder Dragon is, let's fight.
See GCU setting up in a brush here, hoping to pick somebody off. See if anyone on big gets close enough.
Ooh,
Scout it up, the arrow
everybody.
connects.
Yeah, but there is a cleanse immediately from Pekin Wolf. He actually,
there's a Mikhail's done.
Yeah, Mikhail's actually. So
RF Legendary opens up onto Rikara. Fabi's on the wrong side of this team fight. He's going to go down.
Fabi gets blown up by Phoenix, and that's going to be crucial because he has a lot of damage. Bayano also goes down. Now the only real damage dealer left is Ryze, and the Braum ultimate does whiff. The Realm Warp is going to teleport him out, and it does wind up getting the safety back on their top side of the map, but GCU caught 2 key targets.
But I think depending on how it goes from here, they might be able to end the game out. They only have the Ryze as the real threat. I mean, the Kazakhs too a little bit, but they have 5 people left available as well as the Braum still with his exhaust. It's going to be extremely hard for them to be able to defend their base.
That's right, so one inhibitor that has respawned will fall. The other one is already down, and now Gold Coin United looking to end the game. They're just waiting for minions to push into the base. 2 Nexus towers still left available. There's a tanky Nautilus, there's a damage dealing Ryze, and there's a Kazakhs who's just waiting to get some resets. But with Guardian Angels up on their side,
ooh, nice insect.
Good. Ooh, Santorin kicks Pekin Wolf back into his team. That's going to be Phoenix picking up another kill.
There's
and even though Wiggly's trying to go in, the exhaust goes down, and it looks like that's going to be the game. Gold Coin United, we had a lot of questions in this one when they had their gold advantage, but they are able to, in the end, take the game and tie the series 1-1.
It's not a pretty win though, Tom. It's one of those situations where you're happy to get that win, but it's not at all the way that you were expecting, and you kind of just have to look at the tape and say we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, so Gold Coin United, like we mentioned, coming into the Challenger Series, favorites to be one of the big teams in this, if not potentially
probably the powerhouse of the entire thing. You're right.
And they come up against Big God's Jackals, who came in through. They bought Enix's spot. They had to re-qualify by beating the 3rd place team in the open qualifier tournament. Not necessarily as many big names on their team. Sure, they have a little bit of LCS experience on their roster as well, but they showed in that game number 1, they were able to take a fight to a team like Gold Coin United. And even in this game, they were able to hang on and take opportunity, not even during the lane phase. Like Fabi himself was winning that game almost single-handedly.
I mean, I think you could say they would have won that game if not for that that crazy Baron situation that happened where after getting a single kill, they end up losing a number of people and giving up the Baron buff, which is ultimately what ended up giving GCU the power to actually win this game.
Yeah, and of course, Baron kind of been a theme throughout this entire night. It's well, Baron and Elder Dragon, I guess. All these objective fights, they haven't necessarily been the cleanest. And in this case, specifically for GCU, it seemed like it was more of a communication issue as opposed to how are we going to approach this kind of thing.
Right. I think it's the kind of thing where when you see teams struggling in the mid game, they put a much higher priority on late game objectives. The fact that they're not able to force plays around other things, that they can't get good dives off on inhibitor turrets without it. They can't snowball in team fights. They don't get the picks around Baron. A lot of these Barons are ones that are 50-50s or where people just get into crazy team fights as soon as the Baron smite happens. Just overall, there's a little less controlled play, which means you have to keep forcing around them because you don't get as much off each play.
Well, we can sit here and speculate for all we want, but we can also just kind of hear it straight from the pros themselves. For more on that win, let's hear it from Sam Torin, who's joining us via Skype. How's it going?
I'm getting you.
No, well, these have been some pretty exciting challenger games. So
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy 2 games. Obviously, you had a big comeback this time. Other way in game 1. So tell me a little bit what the series was like from your perspective.
So obviously we're using a substitute as our support right now. MetLife did kind of a lot of our shot calling, so there's definitely a lot of stuff where other players had to pick up on that. On top of that, the way we played bot lane had to change because as a new player, we had to find a new identity. And we came back from Korea like a week ago, so obviously we didn't have that much time as we hoped we had. In the games, I think we just didn't like play to our win condition properly. Our communication wasn't like the way it should have been. So there's a lot of risky fights, a lot of like just random fights, to be honest. That's also like it mainly just came down to Barons who had the lead on Barons fights, and that's not really how you should be playing to win a game, obviously.
Yeah, especially when you have such strong split pushers available. I wanted to jump back just to the bot lane point for a second because you mentioned having to kind of cater your style to him, and I think one of the things that surprised both of us was the Braum pick, especially when we saw so much ban focus around the support position that this was what you guys were opting for. Was this something that you were forced into by the other team, or is Braum actually the pick you were hoping to get?
So obviously we were hoping to get Melsaha.
Yeah.
I think we put a little too many bans onto support, and that's why they banned Melsaha and gave us LeBlanc. I think if we banned a little fewer supports, we would have gotten the Melsaha pick, and it would be way better for our draft.
All right, yeah. I mean, that was definitely something that was pretty telegraphed, especially with that last Lulu ban. I think it was interesting to see, though, because it's the kind of thing where they do leave the LeBlanc open, and it's a question of how much practice has Phoenix actually had on it? Because what happens is in these kind of metas where everything's banned red side, you don't get a ton of scrim practice on it. So I won't ask you how much practice you had on, LeBlanc. That's probably not the best question. Don't want you giving that away.
And that's fine, because I want to kind of shift the focus more from like the pick and ban phase to like you yourself as a player. We got a chance to hear from Freeze earlier, who is a fellow EU LCS player, now back in the NA Challenger Series. He's looking to really kind of use this opportunity he had some time off. He's been able to kind of reinvent yourself. And now you yourself were before in the NA LCS. You're back in the Challenger scene. What is your approach to this team, and how are you looking to develop as a player here?
So obviously, like playing in the challenger scene, it's at worst level in competition. It allows me to practice a lot of other stuff, like being a leader, being a shot caller, like knowing how to basically just being one of the leaders on the team. It's something that is hard for me previously on TSM because I just came in as a rookie and it felt like the shot calling was already taken part of. So now playing on a new team, it definitely opens up a lot of stuff for me. Besides that, I mean, playing in the challenger scene, I'm really happy for the team I have right now. I think we just need more practice, and we'll slowly become the best team.
You guys certainly do have a lot of hype around you, and we look forward to not only yourself, but the rest of your team improving as the Challenger Series goes on. So congratulations, and thank you for the interview.
Thank you.
All right, well, with that, tonight's matches, unfortunately, have come to an end. But what we do get to get a picture of is now how the NACS League stands. At the top of the stack is Delta Fox, who claim sole possession of first place after their 2-0 finish tonight.
Then we have a 4-way tie with all of our second place teams finishing 1-1, and Team Gates, of course, ends the week without a win.
And for more league action, be sure to tune in to the NALCS starting on Friday. FlyQuest is going to take to the Rift in our first series, going head-to-head against Counterlogic Gaming.
Then we close out the evening with TSM versus Dignitas. one of the hypest matches, I think, at one of the hot-looking import teams versus one of the old guard.
It's definitely going to be super, super exciting, but I know you'll have plenty to say when we get to LCS this weekend, so that's going to be it for us tonight. So from myself, Mark, and the entire Challenger broadcast crew, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.